I'm Angelina King. Tonight, Toronto Police increases its security presence in the wake of the Israel-Hamas conflict.
Our communities have spoken clearly that they don't feel safe, and we are being responsive to that concern.
More on what officers are doing and how they responded to threats made at a Jewish school today. Plus,
we're talking about politics and politicians, and it becomes far more convoluted.
Digging a little deeper into the investigation surrounding the Ford government's handling of the Greenbelt. What could that look like? And
it's like a really exciting moment, especially because there's not been something like this in recent history.
Taylor Swift does it again. Unprecedented demand for the singer's new film means Swifties, including those in Toronto, got an early sneak peek. Good evening and thanks for joining us. There's an increased police presence in the city tonight after community leaders expressed concern that the escalating conflict in the Middle East has some people here fearing for their safety. Toronto police have set up command posts and are increasing patrols in certain areas. Ali Shiasan has more.
Since this past weekend, all officers have been advised to have their uniforms ready and be available for deployment.
The Toronto chief of police says that effort is ramping up since they've become aware of, quote, global online threats about events that may occur Friday.
There will be 2 command posts set up to serve local communities. I want to be clear, there's no specific threat to the city of Toronto. However, our communities have spoken clearly that they don't feel safe, and we are being responsive to that concern.
It's already noticeable in Jewish neighborhoods. The police presence has also expanded to mosques and other places of worship.
We'd like them to feel comfortable to go and express themselves and go to synagogue and go to mosque and go to businesses and attend in their community. And we'd like them to do so feeling safe. And that's precisely why we're deploying the way we are.
I feel much better knowing that they are stepping up security and that they're watching out for our community.
Some faith organizations are collecting donations to be sent overseas. Those attending find the police presence reassuring and concerning, all at the same time.
As a Jew living in Canada, I'm afraid about what's going on. There could be a similar wave of hate anywhere in the world.
We are concerned. We obviously are confident in the police ability to provide a proper security to our communities, mosque and community organization buildings.
The local Arab community has its own concerns about safety and rhetoric.
We know already that many people who look like Arabs or Muslim have been harassed, attacked. But the most important thing for us is this narrative, this discourse coming from politicians who are not balanced.
This afternoon, Toronto police officers, including the chief of police, responded to the Community Hebrew Academy. Police say around 12:30, security at the Jewish private school told 3 males to leave the area. The males then allegedly made threats to the school and left the property. Officers searched the area and arrested all 3 people, and the hate crime unit is now investigating. Threats online, threats in person. Police are on high alert, just as the community members are. Ali Shiasan, CBC News, Toronto.
And in the wake of the conflict, Toronto City Council passed a motion tonight condemning all forms of hate. The motion directs city staff and the police board to create an online package of information by next Friday to help organizations report hate crimes. To the conflict zone now, where thousands of Israeli troops are positioned along the border with Gaza. Israel's military says they're preparing for a ground offensive. Israel says more than 1,300 people have been killed there since Saturday, and that Hamas is holding up to 150 people hostage. In Gaza, health authorities say about 1,500 people are dead. Israel's bombardment of Gaza continues, responding to the deadly surprise attack by Hamas on Saturday. Meanwhile, Hamas militants have fired thousands of rockets into Israel, and there are fears the conflict could spread in the region. On the ground in Gaza, there's no electricity as the power plant ran out of fuel yesterday. Hospitals are overwhelmed and running out of supplies. Israel says nothing will be allowed into Gaza until Israeli hostages are released. More than 300,000 people have fled their homes in Gaza, and talks about opening up a humanitarian aid corridor through Egypt are still ongoing. And the war is prompting some Canadians to leave Israel. Today, more than 100 people made it out on the first Canadian government flight from Tel Aviv to Athens.
Mixed feelings because my husband's family are all here and we came for a very, very large and joyful celebration, and we know that we're leaving them behind. And one of our sons was almost paralyzed with anxiety because of the situation and had to be reassured quite constantly.
The plane took off mid-afternoon local time and landed a few hours later. Canadian officials say at least 2 flights per day will take off until everyone who wants to leave Israel can. But they say they can't help the 100 people in Gaza who've asked for assistance without that humanitarian corridor. And Canada has announced an initial $10 million in funding for humanitarian assistance to help with worsening conditions in the region. The money will help provide food, water, and emergency medical assistance. Canada says it will ensure no money goes to Hamas. A portion of the funding will support the Canadian Red Cross and its partners. More details on allocations to specific partners will be shared in the coming days. And Toronto's Jewish community is requesting supplies that are needed to help Israelis.
We collected some medical supplies from my community, and as you can see, there's people from all over just rushing to bring whatever we can.
We're gathering much needed supplies, medical supplies, first aid supplies, medications, things like that for people who have been targeted by terror and who have had to leave their homes.
When that call was answered, thousands of items were dropped off today at the Lipa Green Center on Bathurst Street. The ask is for medicine, toiletries, and clothing such as socks and thermal underwear. The donation drive was organized by the United Jewish Appeal Federation of Greater Toronto. Switching gears now to the Greenbelt controversy, we're hearing from a retired RCMP officer tonight about how the criminal investigation into the Ford government's Greenbelt plan is likely to unfold, what changes it could bring, and how long it could take. Lorenda Redekop has that story.
At a minimum, it's going to be 12 to 18 months.
Gary Clement is a retired RCMP officer and has worked on cases involving government. With the Greenbelt investigation, he says there will be lots of evidence to pore over and many people to interview, including landowners who were set to benefit from land being opened up for housing before Premier Doug Ford reversed that.
Whether they cooperate or not will be yet to remain to be seen. So I tend to think there'll be some roadblocks put up, because if there is some wrongdoing, nobody's going to come forward.
He says potential charges could be breach of trust or fraud, more complex than some.
You've got $1,000 sitting on the table and somebody comes and scoops it from you and you don't know it, that's theft. It's pretty black and white. Unfortunately, we're talking about politics and politicians, and it becomes far more convoluted than that.
The OPP investigated the Liberals' gas plant scandal for 2.5 years before laying charges. Former Premier Dalton McGuinty's chief of staff was found guilty and sentenced to jail time.
There's some really questionable things.
The interim Liberal leader says police have more investigative powers compared to the Auditor General and Integrity Commissioner, who've already done their own Greenbelt investigations.
They have the power of subpoena. They have far more access into financial information that may be involved in this outside of government.
Here's why he believes that's important.
Everything up until now has been about protecting the king, protect the premier. And so I think with this investigation, it's going to change over to protect yourself.
I'd like to begin by taking...
The Green Party leader wants the RCMP to expand their investigation to include all land deals, including fast-tracking zoning changes, MZOs as they're known. Whether that happens or not, this long timeline for the investigation means this could still be an issue in the next election. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Taking you outside for a live look at downtown Toronto tonight. Clear skies, we're sitting at around 8 degrees right now. Let's bring in Colette Kennedy for your weather forecast. Colette, the day felt pretty warm, but in some areas, are we actually already talking about frost?
Yeah, Angelina, we are at that point in the year where we see the frost advisories, and there's still a chance to protect some of that vegetation. Or if you're like me and you have certain plants that go out, potted plants that go out in the summertime and they come back in for the winter, you might want to be thinking about that too. Areas we're talking about the frost advisory here. So places like Uxbridge and Georgina and towards Caledon, you're all included in this. Newmarket as well. So all of these areas, we do have that frost advisory in place. As for the temperatures and what they're looking like, they actually in some of those areas will get close to the freezing mark, a few degrees above. For Toronto, though, it's going to be around 5, actually 5 to 6 for that overnight temperature. I think we will dip to 5, and then by 5 a.m., back to 6 degrees. So it is still going to be a cooler start tomorrow morning until we can get things going. We're also looking at this system that's going to be approaching, and we'll certainly see some increasing cloudiness through the day tomorrow. And then into the evening, we get into the chance of seeing those showers developing. There's your low for tonight. Tomorrow's high, 14. Much of the day dry. I'll get into the details of when the wet weather comes coming up.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for that, Colette. Well, it's been a cruel summer for fans who've been anxiously awaiting to see Taylor Swift's new concert film, but that wait is now over, and it came a day early. The pop star herself announced the film would premiere a day ahead of schedule because, in true Taylor Swift fashion, the demand for tickets was just too great. Our Tyler Cheese spoke to fans at one of the city's first screenings.
We've both been listening to her since we were very young.
Swifties were out in full force for one of the first screenings of Taylor Swift's new concert film.
It's kind of like we've grown up with her and with her music.
She was my first album, my first YouTube video that I ever saw. I've grown up with her, like she said, and I just love how she puts so much meaning into everything that she's doing.
The Eras Tour film, which documents the pop star's current record-breaking tour, officially released today, one day ahead of schedule. The singer announced the early release on social media yesterday, saying the move was due to unprecedented demand. According to Cineplex, the movie's already garnered over $6 million in pre-sale tickets, and they're not the only company reaping the rewards.
We've sold around $1 million worth of tickets so far.
The president of Landmark Cinemas says the film is one of its highest pre-selling events of all time.
And last I checked, it was number 6 in our list of pre-selling events. And the fan interest has been incredible. They've been emailing in, asking if they're allowed to stand up and dance and sing.
And that's what many fans did.
Jumping, dancing, singing, everything. Yeah.
These fans came armed with friendship bracelets to trade with other fans, an idea that came from Swift herself.
They're about her inside jokes, her albums, all the things she says, her different eras, and it's just a great way to connect with other Swifties.
Concert films like this one have been around for a long time, but this one is going toe-to-toe with recent blockbusters like the Barbie movie, which begs the question, why?
The first thing is because Taylor Swift is a very big deal. And then the other thing is the distribution deal she struck for the film, which is, if not unique, certainly distinctive.
Film professor Charlie Kyle says Swift struck a unique distribution deal directly with theaters, bypassing the traditional use of distributors that would normally help promote a film, which means she'll be pocketing a lot of the money brought in from ticket sales. He says this could lead to other artists following in Swift's footsteps. Beyoncé has already worked out a similar deal for her upcoming concert film coming out in December.
But I think people have to be cognizant of the fact that not every artist is a Taylor Swift or a Beyoncé.
For those who may not be lucky enough to snag tickets for the show in Toronto next fall, they can at least see her here on the big screen instead. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
The man accused of killing members of a Muslim family in London, Ontario, testifies in court. We'll have the details just ahead. Plus, welcome back. The man facing murder and terrorism charges in the fatal attack on a Muslim family testified in his own defense today. Nathaniel Veltmans hit the family with his truck in London, Ontario in June of 2021. 4 people were killed. A 9-year-old boy survived. As Thomas Dagler reports, Veltmans was the defense's first witness.
Nathaniel Veltmans appeared nervous but spoke clearly, answering questions from his lawyer and sometimes looking at the jury seated near him in the courtroom. Veltmans testified about what he described as his fundamentalist Christian upbringing. The now 22-year-old was homeschooled in small-town Strathroy, Ontario, and recalled in court his mother punishing him frequently and preventing him from seeing other children she considered unchristian. Veltmans said, "I turned into this cauldron of rage and secretly hated her." He left the family home at age 16. He's now facing charges of terrorism-motivated murder after running over the Afzal family with his pickup truck in June 2021. After the Crown presented its case, today defense lawyer Christopher Hicks made his opening statement, telling jurors the intention to kill was not formed and there was no planning and deliberation.
We're disputing the intention involved in these matters, okay? The criminal intent that's necessary for these charges.
The jury was previously shown video of the accused telling police he targeted Muslims and that in his words it wasn't just murder but terrorism. The court also heard last month that Veltman had taken magic mushrooms the day before the attack. The defense's next witness is expected to be a forensic psychiatrist set to testify about the impact of hallucinogenic substances. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Toronto.
A teen was sent to hospital this afternoon after a stabbing at a high school in the East End. The 15-year-old boy is in serious condition but is expected to survive. He was stabbed outside David and Mary Thompson Collegiate in the Midland and Lawrence area. Police say it happened just before 1:30 this afternoon. 2 people have been arrested. And you might remember that $20 million gold heist at Pearson Airport last spring that made international headlines. Well, now Brinks, a security company that arranges transportation for high-value items, is suing Air Canada. The company alleges the airline failed to verify shipping documents handed to them by an unnamed individual before releasing the cargo. Air Canada declined to comment. A police investigation is ongoing, but the gold is still missing, and no arrests have been made. Blue Jays president Mark Shapiro held his end-of-season media conference today, and not surprisingly, he faced some difficult questions about the team's disappointing performance in the postseason, as well as some of the decisions that ultimately led to the Jays being eliminated. Our Greg Ross has the details.
And what I keep thinking about is how much we let down the fans.
Mark Shapiro says getting swept by the Twins in the wildcard series last week was a bitter pill to swallow. But in some ways, it was a reflection of the entire season.
You know, this season was a grind. You know, it was not ever easy. It was extremely frustrating and it was challenging. I'm not sure why.
Fans felt that frustration, many taking to social media after the Jays were eliminated to vent. One of the biggest points of contention, the decision to pull Jays starter Jose Barrios early in Game 2 of the wild card, despite the fact he was pitching well.
In a good spot, and they're going to make a pitching change.
And John Schneider has already pointed to the pen.
Last week, Jays GM Ross Atkins distanced himself from that decision, saying it was all manager John Schneider's and not a team decision. Today, Shapiro added some clarity.
I knew the game plan. I knew the purpose behind it. I was aware of it and knew that the goal was to bring Kikuchi in to turn over the lineup, but I didn't know when it would happen. So I found out at the same moment in time when John walked to the mound.
He is admitting that they both knew that it was going to happen at some point in the game. And so, I mean, it doesn't take Ross Atkins off the hook for blaming John Schneider and seemingly throwing him under the bus on Saturday, but it does clarify the situation to me.
Ultimately, Shapiro doesn't believe that move cost them the game or the series. He says it was a lack of production by the offense that did them in.
We hit but didn't score runs. We need to do a better job scoring runs. We need to be better on the base pass.
The Jays struggled on offense all season, which has raised some questions about moves made by Atkins to let some of their biggest bats go from last year, like Teoscar Hernandez and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. Today, Shapiro stood by his GM, erasing any questions about his future with the club.
And in Ross's case, the body of work, to me, is undeniable. You know, Ross will be back as GM.
Undoubtedly, the big focus for Atkins this offseason will be improving the offense. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back straight into your long-range forecast now. And Colette, we were talking about frost advisories before, but that and some other conditions really just depend on where you are.
Yeah, you know, Angelina, in this show, we cover a rather broad forecasting area, and it's always a little bit different in terms of what can be happening. But this is a situation, one of those ones where we could have very different sky conditions as we go through the next couple of days. So I'm going to break it all down. We do have those frost advisories for tonight, kind of northern parts of the GTA that I was pointing out earlier in the show. We'll see increasing cloudiness through the GTA and the Golden Horseshoe as we go into Friday. Although prior to that, you get into that cloud cover for southwestern Ontario and that chance for some isolated showers, as we're seeing even tonight. And then it's really the conditions so split on Saturday, at least the way the models are pushing this system towards us. And I'm going to show you that breakdown here in a moment. But the setup, again, that cold air, that Colorado low developing ahead of it, some warm conditions. So on that dividing line, even some severe active weather stateside through the U.S. Yes, this is a snow event into portions of Colorado for sure, and other parts of the Rockies where, again, they are looking at that 30 to 50 centimeters of rain, the heavier rain and winds out ahead of it, 30 to 50 centimeters of snow, pardon me. We got to get used to that language again as we're getting deeper into fall. And then it just kind of pushes through southwestern Ontario. And look at that, how kind of halfway through the GTA, we get into the wet weather. Northeast, likely drier or just isolated showers, still some windier conditions and the cloud cover, but the rain really stretches there around the Niagara region too, back towards Sarnia, down into Windsor, Leamington. So it's a very different kind of weekend as we move into it, as this pushes on through. And then once we get later Saturday towards Sunday, although still some isolated showers and certainly some cloud cover, it should be kind of improving all around in terms of what we're seeing. 14 the high for Toronto tomorrow. Saturday, 13, travel east if you want to stay drier, but it'll be breezy. And then looking ahead from there, still just that chance for showers, Angelina, into Sunday and Monday.
All right, thanks for all that, Colette. And finally for us tonight, a Vancouver Island gas station was visited by a unique shoplifter recently.
The door was open and he just sauntered in and slowly walked around the store and sniffed a few things and found what he wanted and basically left.
I thought it was amazing. I thought it was so cool.
Of a growing number of incidents involving black bears in British Columbia, the province's conservation officials say incidents like these are becoming more common because of the weather's impact on natural food sources. So what did the bear make off with this time? Gummy bears, and that's not a joke. That actually happened. All right, that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Maribel Truk has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6, and I'll see you back here at 11 tomorrow night. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for watching.